Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, it's me Gamerturk, and this is weekly Sword Art Online Alicization War of Underworld Q&A for episode 11, the series that I haven't been doing for the past 2-3 weeks maybe, so let's get back to it. So basic information, we have normal questions that are non-spoiler questions that you can safely watch if you have already watched Sword Art Online Alicization War of Underworld episode 11. Then we have opinion questions, which I don't think we have this week. And then we have spoiler questions, which we have one of them this week. It's minor spoilers at this point, but I still included in the spoiler sections just to keep you safe, which means it's content beyond episode 11. So if you don't want spoilers, you may just not watch that question at all. Anyways, first off, this is not a direct question, but a whole lot of you were confused in general as to how the Americans can even log into Underworld. You know, Gabrielle said it's not even polygons, etc, all those kinds of stuff. So I mentioned this back in my episode 11 explained, and I also promised that I would provide a more in-depth explanation here in the Q&A, so I wouldn't go too much on a tangent in that explained video, otherwise it would have been way too long. For starters, Project Alicization is built with the seed package, so essentially what it is just your traditional VR MMORPG game. The only advantage of actually using a Soul Translator, the STL unit, is that you can take advantage of Clocklight acceleration, so the sped up time within Underworld so you don't spend as much time in the real world. Of course, you can also take advantage of various incarnation related stuff as well as the god abilities, but considering those multiple thousand people are not logging in as god accounts, that's obviously not related to the topic at hand. So you take away the Soul Translator, force people to use M-spheres or nerve gears, whatever you can think of, to log into Underworld. Well, the only benefit you're taking away from them, aside from the ability to use proper incarnation of course, is the fact that they simply can't take advantage of Clocklight acceleration. They won't feel anything, it doesn't change the way they interact with the world, they just get booted out instantly if the Clocklight acceleration is something other than 1x, so if it's not running at real time, they simply get booted out, they can't log back in. That's the main reason why Critter lowered the Clocklight acceleration to 1x before logging every single American into the world. Otherwise, they simply wouldn't be able to connect. And once that Clocklight acceleration comes down to 1x, well, it's no longer the glorified simulation that it is, but running at real time just like any other VR MMO game, so people can log in using their M-spheres or any other device that is compatible with the seed engine infrastructure groundwork stuff. That means everyone from Halo, everyone from GGO, everyone from Asuka Empire and other games can simply log in if they have a port to actually log in from. That's what Critter enabled the Americans, that's how the Halo players and other people are gonna log in as well. But yeah, that should hopefully clear up the confusion regarding how they can log in despite being said otherwise earlier in the series, because anytime this was brought up before in the series, it was all related to Clocklight acceleration. You know, the simulation needs to go on as fast as possible. When you're making casual statements, you don't go ahead and make those statements based on the assumption that some hidden mercenary teams from the United States will attack your top secret military base, you know? Since it was basically a casual description of how things run to Asuna, they didn't need to state anything different at all. But now, with that information coming to light, now you can understand how it actually properly works. Anyways, moving on to the first real question. I started reading the light novels about a month back and I've been slowly progressing and I just finished 7 volumes so far. I had a question with regards to the seed conversion feature. From what I remember in the Phantom Bullet arc, when you convert accounts, it was explained that things like stats, skills and name could be kept. Any items such as equipment and money were unable to be kept. Is there something in the light novels that explains how the Americans are able to go into Underworld with armor and weapons? So let's start with that first question first, because the second question is something else. How can the Americans are able to go into Underworld with armor and weapons? The fact of the matter is, when they are logging in, they are simply logged in as Dark Knights. So as they log in, they are given the default Dark Knight equipment, etc. and logged in that way. When you see them, you can see them even in the trailer that was published today, they all have the same default Dark Knight armor, just with a reddish hue. So that's how they have armor and weapons. The same question comes up with regards to the ALO players. Shouldn't they be only able to start without any equipment because they're converting their accounts, going back to the beginning of the sentence, of course? So again, since I'm answering from the top of my mind, don't take this as a fact. This is what I remember myself, but haven't double checked extensively because there's too much stuff that talks about character conversion. The fact of the matter is, your stats, etc. usually remains, but you lose all your money, all your equipments, etc. when you are converting your character from one game to the other, to not give you a huge advantage in the game. You know, you already have a big enough advantage when you're taking your top class stats to other games, but if you were to have top class gear as well, and of course that assumes that the gear you have has a perfect equivalent in the real world, you see where I'm coming from? You can convert certain stats to other things with ease, because stats, as a general fundamental groundwork thing in games, usually have their own equivalents. But armor, equipment, let's say you have Excalibur in Alfheim Online. What happens if you convert over to GGO? GGO doesn't have an Excalibur. GGO doesn't have an equivalent to Excalibur. No? That doesn't work. That's a huge discrepancy that would cause issues for the games, and then balancing issues because it's a top tier thing you gain from another game, and then it becomes, you know, a matter of someone makes a game with the seed, a very easy game with the seed. It has a default quest at the beginning that gives you a top tier gear, and then you convert back. You see where things are going. The balancing effectively goes horribly wrong. The same thing happened with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I believe. They had a quest generator update somewhere, and people used that quest generator to make like 1 minute, 2 minute very easy quests with huge XP yields, which boosted their XP, so Ubisoft cracked down on that. It's a matter of game balancing stuff. When you come over to Underworld, that does not really exist. There are no limitations. They just convert their characters, everything comes with them. There's no worry about balance because the world was created as an isolated thing in the first place, never meant for these kinds of shenanigans over the internet. Call it an oversight on the devs because they didn't factor in some secret mercenary group attacking them and then 10-year-olds invading their world. Yeah, that's what it is. Next question. I just realized something that's been bothering me for a long time. In the first season of Alicization, we see that when Düsselbert Synthesis 7 uses enhanced armament, his conflagration bow's bowstring burns up, but during the fight of the Human Empire versus Dark Territory, we see that his bowstring doesn't burn up. So here's the question. Which version is more accurate according to the light novels? That's actually a good observation. I congratulate you on the observation, but the answer is much more simpler than you probably think. Which version is more accurate according to the light novels? Both are perfectly accurate. If you look at the first instance back in the Central Cathedral when his bowstring burns up, that's because Düsselbert simply sent an entire salvo of arrows and subsequently he of course runs out of arrows. So the only next option is to use the ability of his bow to generate those flame incorporeal arrows, you know? It charges up, creates the flamey arrow, pulls the string, and then it goes blast shit up. The disadvantage is that, as Kirito says back in that episode, that takes a while to charge back up. Now if you go back, well, go forward to War of Underworld when there's like hundreds of goblins rushing at him from every single direction, it's probably not the best idea to burn your bowstring to create, you know, flamey arrows that charge up over a couple of seconds. That would be a huge detriment. So what he does is he just efficiently uses arrows to do as much damage as possible, and then switches over to his sword, and eventually uses his sword as a catalyst to use the Phoenix, you know, the Release Recollection form. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If he were to burn up his bowstring, that would be a huge problem for Düsselbert in that case, because he would need to charge up, he doesn't have time to charge up, everything is rushing from everywhere, people are dying. Both are accurate, both are different circumstances. That's the answer. Next question, just who was that character with the navigation Pixie that we saw at the end of episode 11? I've read the light novels and even the fan translation for Alicization Lasting, but I don't remember anyone like that. Is that character Nochizawa Eiji from Orbital Scale or some hint to a new character from Unital Ring? If it's AG, can the navigation Pixie be Yuna? And how will it affect the story? Let's go one by one. Yes, it is Nochizawa AG from Ordinal Scale. Yes, the Pixie is definitely Yuna. The reason you won't come across such a thing in Alicization Lasting is because Alicization Light Novels were written before Ordinal Scale was a thing. This was retconned into the light novel continuity as well, with things like Hopeful Chant, Cordial Chords. I believe Unitil Ring will have some role with AG and Yuna as well. So yeah, that kind of answers some of those questions. If it's AG, can the navigation Pixie be Yuna? Yes, I said yes to that. How is that possible? That's in Cordial Chords, the Ordinal Scale epilogue story, which I'll have a summary video during the break, so stay tuned for that. How will it affect the story? That's gonna be interesting because none of us know. I mean, my assumption is that the war is so big. Okay, let's try answering this without going into spoilers. The war is so big that everyone does get their spotlight. However, the individual actions of individual people don't affect the war all that much. It's the collaborative effort, the grand war effort that changes things left or right. So the inclusion of AG, unless he will have his own narrative thread, which I doubt that they will go such a way, it's just AG gonna be there, do some cool stuff, but not affect the grand scheme of things all that much. It's just gonna be one of those major tie-ins into the fact that Ordinal Scale exists now in the canon. I don't expect too much to change in the continuity in any way. I don't think it will affect anything in the main continuity all that much. But I'm gonna keep my eyes open, and I'm quite interested to see how they will adapt that. Maybe if they create some thread lines, narrative threads that can carry on to later arcs such as Unitil Scale. What is Unitil Scale? Unitil Ring, if they're gonna try tying into that early on, that'd be an interesting choice. They can try doing that, but I don't expect too much to change. Next question. This question has been wandering in my mind since from the end of the first part of Alicization, first and second core. My question is that is it possible to copy an artificial Clocklight? Yes, it is very much possible. In fact, that is exactly what Quinella did when she created Cardinal, because she copied herself onto Lycerith, and then when two copies saw each other, the actual copy realized it wasn't real and its Clocklight crashed. So these are important details that I'm mentioning in the middle of your question, because I'm gonna use that to answer your question. And if it can, then my second question, is it possible to copy Alice's Clocklight? And by that I mean a whole body of her is copied, and the memory of Alice Tsuberg that has been taken by the Axiom Church can be inserted to that copied Clocklight. Yes, it can, if the Clocklight actually existed, because that Clocklight is now completely deleted, never to be recovered again. If that was possible, like if we go back multiple months before Alice Tsuberg was deleted, yes, that is possible. You can copy that and put it into a new body. The only critical thing is that that body must never see the original Alice Tsuberg, because if that happens, the copy will crash again, just like any other copy, you know, the Clocklight crash thingy that happened with Higa's copy back in episode 6, and then with Lycerith, etc. So yeah, it is theoretically possible, but given the circumstances that we have, it is not, because Alice Tsuberg is dead. Next question. Don't the super accounts have a default skin or something? I mean, Vector doesn't look like Gabrielle or his Stabilizer account. Why does Stacia look like Asuna, Solus like Sinon, and Terraria like Leafa Alo? So the answer is quite simple, but let me correct you on that first one. Vector does look like Gabrielle and his Stabilizer account. It's very clear that they look pretty much the same. Why does Stacia look like Asuna, Solus like Sinon, and Terraria like Leafa, and of course Vector like Gabrielle? It's very much, it's never explicitly explained, but it's very much implied that if a person dives using an STL, a soul translator, they pretty much dive in as themselves. I do not know, I cannot know, because it's not explicitly stated, if the STL scans the person's head and body to recreate them in the world, or if it's something like Brain Burst from Axel World, it recognizes how you see yourself and uses that self-image to recreate you, which is actually the more likelier scenario in this case. and uses that as the base for the account you're diving in as. It's obviously not something like Kikoka created the Stacia account and made her look exactly the same as Asuna. He didn't create a Solus account to exactly look like Sinon. He didn't create Terraria to look exactly like Leafa, etc. It's very much the STL, the simulation, doing that. It's never explicitly stated, but it's pretty obvious. And the last question is the bit I included into the spoiler section. It's very mild spoilers, but if you're spoiler sensitive, you should probably leave before listening to the question. But with that spoiler running out of the way, the question is, did Terraria and Solus have the same headache if they use their unique skills? I really don't note this, probably read this in the novel. By the way, I don't see Vector suffering headache anytime as well, until lasting. So the thing is, Terraria and Solus's abilities, they're not heavy on the brain. It's not making the user process anything. If you look at Stacia's ability, she literally takes all the geometry data of the world, processes it in her brain, and then puts it back out as a permanent change to the world. That's the entire processing aspect is what causes that strain on the Clocklight. When you look at Terraria, she simply has a unending healing ability. It's not in her own Clocklight, it's merely a god ability that she has. I'm pretty sure nothing is related to Incarnation when it comes to Terraria. When you look at Solus, well, Solus does have Incarnation related ability, which is the flight, the unending flight ability, but again, she's not processing anything. She's just telling the system where to take her. She's not changing any geometry. She's not creating stuff that don't exist, etc. That's a very low tier, not low tier ability, but like very low strain on a Clocklight, because again, she's not processing anything. Vector suffers a headache because what Vector does is that he processes all the memory data from other Clocklights. So he is actually processing data, and that's what causes the headache. It's not as much as Asuna's strain, because that's like a huge amounts of geometry data, while Vector is just one by one, like it happens in passing, and he's not changing anything as well. He's just experiencing them. There's, yes, some alteration. I don't want to say alteration because it's more like numbing someone's sense of feel. But yeah, it's again not as heavy as Stacia ability, and that's why he doesn't get headaches all that much as Asuna does. Like Asuna, the first time she uses her ability full scale, boom, instant headache. Vector, he has used the ability multiple times. Even back at the Obsidia Palace, he used it multiple times. That's why he sees the soul flying off of Lipia, for example, because of the Vector ability. But yeah, when you look at Terraria and Solus, that's barely anything in comparison, so they don't get their headaches. Hope that answers the question, and that was the final question as well. Hope you enjoyed this Q&A. Sorry for the lack of Q&A videos lately. I'm just exams, traveling back to Turkey, now some family time. I barely have time to do any of these. But yeah, this week is gonna be the final episode before the break. After that, we're gonna have one more Alicization Q&A, and then I am gonna start with my actual break plans. Well, I'm not taking a break, like things I'm gonna do during the break. And when I'm back in Austria, that's gonna be so much more easier to get them actually done without wasting my time. I don't have heavy exam weeks in the future, heavy university weeks, so yeah, I'm hoping things are gonna be back on track soon enough. I'll see you tomorrow, no, the day after, with Alicization Explained for episode 12, and then we are gonna have special videos during during the break. So yeah, I'll see you then. Stay cool, like, can't even speak properly.